Still to come in April on Patreon, I look back at my infamous 420 video in Buckley vs. Buckley, and adult shops in Canada want to be classified as medical supplies? Hours of exclusive entertainment when you support the habit at patreon.com/doseofbuckley. The world is in a constant state of change. I don't think this is something I need to tell you. Society is very different now than it was 50 years ago, and society 50 years ago was very different than society 50 years before it. For example, there was a time when they ran ads for cigarettes like, "More doctors smoke Camels than any other brand," or even comparing the gentleness of their cigarettes to that of a newborn baby. Then they went, okay, you can't suggest that they're good for you or use doctors anymore. So they started using cartoons, and then eventually they said, so this looks like a product for kids? Yeah, you can't do that either. Which, by the way, was allowed for 9 years. Oh, but don't worry, the Surgeon General let us know that cigarette smoke has carbon monoxide. That'll stop them. Then you couldn't advertise cigarettes on TV, radio, or billboards at all, and then you couldn't have ads or displays in convenience stores, and then you had to hide them, and so we went from, "Doctors say Camels are the best cigarettes," to, "Holy fuck, you want cigarettes? Shh, don't say that so loudly. Hold on, let me open this nondescript locked case where I'll get you a package where the picture of the diseased lung is bigger on the package than the logo." That all happened in the span of about 70 years. There are plenty of people still alive who watched all of that go down, who are like, "Back in my day, men smoked and women had the decency to do their crying in private and not tattle on you." In that same time period, our attitudes towards marijuana have heavily relaxed from the days of reefer madness. That people were going to smoke weed and then become so crazed they jump off buildings or become murderers. Hell, even your old pal Buckley's eased up over the years. I mean, I still think people who smoke daily or several times daily that don't have an actual medical condition and claim, "I can stop anytime I want, I just don't wanna," should consider figuring out what in their life makes them so dependent on escaping that reality and fixing it. And I still think celebrating weed culture is dumb. Like, if it's just a medicine, why are you wearing shirts with weed logos on it? I don't have fucking blacklight posters with pictures of Tylenol on them in my home. But I have no issue with people who smoke weed on occasion, and the taxes that it brings in replaces those lost by declining cigarette sales. Colorado apparently collects over $20 million in taxes every month. Good for them. But not everyone's as willing to get with the times as me, says the guy who still uses a program from 1999 to make all of his graphics. For example, in Nebraska, where I actually don't think society has changed in the last 50 years, they're one of the few states that doesn't even allow medical marijuana of any kind and have done almost nothing to decriminalize it. They're one of only 2 states, Idaho being the other one, where it's completely illegal. In fact, this shows how against it they are. Nebraska wanted the Supreme Court to block their neighbor, that pesky Colorado, from legalizing marijuana because they didn't want it that close, and they had an 11% increase in marijuana arrests after Colorado legalized it in 2014. The Supreme Court told them to piss off. 7 years later, and with northern neighbor South Dakota soon to allow medical marijuana, Nebraska's talking about it again. And their governor, Pete Rickett, said this:
"If you legalize marijuana, you're going to kill your kids." That's what the data shows from around the country.
Now that is a hell of a hot take. Before he said that, he referenced this story.
People like Levi Pongi, who ingested a marijuana cookie and then jumped off a balcony and killed himself.
The now 7-year-old story of Levi Pongi, a 19-year-old, not a kid, who in 2014, yes, ate 6 times the recommended amount of a weed cookie at once, and then, apparently paranoid, he ran out onto the balcony of a hotel room they were staying at, tripped over the railing, and died. Pretty much recreated reefer madness. A huge win for the anti-weed crowd to have the real-life example they've always wanted. 7 years ago, one fucked up incident, that's the best they can do. When pressed for more, he reportedly referenced a study that showed suicide rates going up in Colorado and marijuana being found in the systems of those people. What that study shows? that in 62 suicides of people aged 10 to 19 in Colorado in 2016, 19 of them found marijuana present. Well, 62 suicides. Close the books on this one. That's all the data anyone needs. There were 48,000 suicides in the United States in 2018. I can't find the exact data for 2016, but it was around 44,000. 13.4 for every 100,000 people. 62 though. No, good sample size. I mean, this chart is a fucking joke. It's so misleading. On the left, you have number of suicides with marijuana present, a scale of 0 to 180. And then on the right, you have total number of suicides, a number that starts at 700 and goes up over 1,000. So at a glance, it looks like, holy fuck, the blue and the green lines, they're almost even. Well, that means that everyone who committed suicide had weed in their system. No. Looking at 2015, for example, a little over 1,050 suicides, with under 160 of them having marijuana present. That's 15%, by the way. A far cry from 32%, which, interestingly enough, is in line with the number of people who claim to smoke marijuana in Colorado. In Colorado, 13.4% of people over the age of 18 said that they smoked at least once in the last 30 days. Huh. So if 13% of the population smoke marijuana at least once a month, and 15% of the population who commit suicide had marijuana in their systems to some degree, that sounds statistically average to me. Pete's also moving the goalposts here because Nebraska is talking about trying to legalize medicinal marijuana, meaning you'd need to have a prescription from a doctor. That's pretty different than being able to go to a dispensary to buy a cookie that supposedly makes you take a header off a fucking hotel balcony. But wait, there's more.
It's a Schedule I drug, according to the federal government. In the same category as things like LSD, heroin, ecstasy.
Oh, the federal government still lists marijuana with heroin and LSD as a Schedule I drug, higher on the list than Schedule II drugs like cocaine and fentanyl, which, by the way, overdose deaths involving fentanyl hit over 36,000 in 2019. I guarantee you 36,000 people in the US didn't die of marijuana cookies. All that shows is how out of touch the federal government is, that maybe someone should look at that and think, yeah, marijuana is probably not as dangerous as fentanyl. We should maybe drop it down a few schedules. Especially since it says right in the listing that Schedule I drugs are drugs with no currently accepted medical use. Many doctors believe that there is at least some accepted medical use. To say that there's no currently accepted medical use is pretty absurd. Yeah, kids shouldn't use it, but kids shouldn't smoke cigarettes or drink booze either. Both are very much legal in Nebraska. Pete doesn't seem to be clutching his pearls over the tax money generated by 87 million packs of cigarettes sold in his state. I mean, who cares if a kid starts smoking now and gets cancer in 40 years? They'll be an adult then, not a kid, so fuck them. And if there's a concern that legalizing marijuana will lead to everyone becoming a fucking pothead, in Canada, they looked at cannabis use before and after legalization. Before legalization, 14.9% of the population used it at least once in a 3-month period. 5.9% of the population used it daily or almost daily. After legalization, 16.1% of the population used it at least once in a 3-month period. 6% used it daily or almost daily. Barely moved the needle. And in fact, use among 15 to 17-year-olds went down from 19.8% to 10%. There's no data showing that once legalization hits, every kid becomes a huge burnout. So don't worry, Pete, and don't worry, parents. Even with legal marijuana existing in the world, your kids will be fine. Unless, you send them to a public school, or you don't believe in vaccines, or you let them eat processed foods, or foods grown with too many chemicals, or the planet ends up so bad due to climate change that they melt to death in the north or freeze to death in the south. I mean, basically, if you do too much, or not enough, or even what you think might be the right amount of parenting, there's a chance that they'll still be fucked. Man, that's stressful to think about. You should probably just relax, maybe find something to help take the edge off. If only there was a product you could easily buy legally to do just that.